Wriggles clear. Might just get the chip, and he does. He's scored. Oh, what a great goal! He's done it. Oh, brilliant play! Wiggling his way. That's an excellent ball. And Didi. It's a goal. Four for Clyde back. Excellent play by Hughes. I think the player of the match, and sweetly finished by Penny.
So I've jumped on a few pages here too. There was, as you'll be aware of, Shoot used to do these booklet things that you could pull out and add to other pages, and you would basically fold them over and do a little booklet. So we'll look at some of the ones from here, and the one I'm going to look at is Bobby Murdoch. So it does say that he was sort of talking about Steve Archibald, how he was a midfielder and moved position. It did say that he was destined to be a forward when first signed, but it was when he moved to right half in 64-65 that he really developed into a top class player. So what's your memories of Bobby?
My memories are embarrassment.
Right.
When I played against him, he was too good. Well, I remember actually the year we won the league at Dundee, we came down to play Celtic, and it was the old jungle that was there, and it was Bobby Lennox's first game for Celtic.
Yeah.
Murdoch was already in the team, and it was Bobby Lennox's first ever game, and our manager Shankly said to me, he knew everything about football and everything about the history of players, and he says, he would say to me, Chris Craig, see this wee guy you're playing against today, he tossed up with a sparrow for legs, and the sparrow won. This was Bobby Lennox. He says, I want you to take him for the knee down. And he says, can you count? I said, yes, boss. That was a crawler. Yes, boss. What's 1 for 11? That says 10. Get them to 10 as quick as possible. But honestly, these were the instructions, that it was half joking, whole earnest, and I'm a crawler, so I'm nodding my head, right, boss, okay, boss. Well, I couldn't get near Lennox, obviously, to nail him. He was very elusive. But I managed to get him with my elbow in his face, and I smashed his nose, and the blood. Bobby, he writes about it in his book, and I see him sometimes in Ayrshire, of course, and he jokes with me, you're dirty so-and-so, you did my nose in. and in those days, you didn't take the jersey off.
Yeah.
They're hyper conscientious now about hygiene and health. The blood stayed on it the whole game. And that was me making my mark, and Shankly said, well done, son. That's But the other side of the pitch, or just behind Lennox, was Murdoch, Bobby Murdoch, who was unbelievably good. I think they'd got, I'm not sure, I think he came from Cambuslang.
Yeah.
Because in that team that eventually was the Lisbon Lions team, this was a few years before the Lisbon Lions, this was 4 years before they won the European Cup, that of that team that played, the Lisbon Lions team, people don't ever remember this, 10 of the 11 played junior football. And that's quite amazing. And people say to me, what do you think? Why are we not as good as we used to be? And when, we're having all these projects, Project Brave and things like this, to try and improve the quality of football. I said, why don't they do what they did before? You played with your school, you played with a youth team maybe, and in Glasgow they can Drumchapel or Garcosh. They were the popular teams, the bigger teams. You play with it, and then you sign for a senior club and they put you out junior, and you do a provisional signing and you play for a year with the men in the junior grade. Now the whole Lisbon Lions team, in fact, I'm digressing here, but Stevie Chalmers, who scored the famous goal to win the European Cup, Stevie Chalmers didn't go to Celtic till he was 23 from Ashfield Juniors. Now Bobby Murdoch, you mentioned there, I'm sure it was Cambuslang Rangers he came from.
It was, yeah.
So Bobby Murdoch is one of the examples of the proper, I thought, a very good progress from school to a boys team, a youth team, and then, but they were all be going to Celtic Boys Club rather than just playing with their local boys club. And So Murdoch was fantastic midfield player. You know, I think he was a because he's a kind of Tommy Docherty type player.
Yeah.
Not unlike the one that we just mentioned. Not unlike Dave Mackay. Bobby, class, absolute silky class player. Terrific passer of the ball, terrific control of the ball. You know, made every attribute that you would want in a midfield player.
I think he was similarly. He's held in high esteem at Middlesbrough when he moved there, and
yes,
gave him a new lease of life as well. And
aye.
Middlesbrough fans really,
they would love him.
Yeah.
And that I knew that team just because I grew up with them, most of them. And I tell you, you've never met a more modest group of guys. The only one that wasn't modest, but it was jocularly funny, was Bertie Auld. You know, Bertie would be boasting about it. You know, he would get on his neck and say, "See, I don't need to go on a coaching course." And he'd bring out a league championship medal and hang around his neck. I'll get one of them. I'll get more than one of them. I didn't need to go to a fancy coaching course to get that. You know, he was a bit dismissive of coaching. You know, what do you call him? Bertie. But Bertie was confident, cocky, but there's not a big-headed one in that team. And I got to know them all just through playing against them and meeting them socially and what have you. Starting with the captain, Billy. And Billy McNeil, you couldn't get a more humble guy. Confident but humble. And Tommy Gemmell played with the same junior team as I played for, slightly different time at Coltness United. And he's another example of going junior. And then from there to Celtic and to be a Lisbon Lion.
Yeah.
So they were all, and Bobby Lennox was Aberdeen Recreation from Ayrshire. So there's a lesson there. I keep saying to why are we bothered? Why don't we put the boys out to junior football to get some experience, to get toughened up a wee bit? And even the Aberdeen boys, the Willie came up to Aberdeen and put him to Peterhead for a season to toughen them up. And Alec McLeish played in, I think he played in Ayrshire juniors. You know.
Jim Leighton, was it Devonvale he went to or something?
I went to Devonvale, but before that he was down at Nielsen. No, it wasn't Nielsen, one of the junior teams in Ayrshire for a season there. And if you mentioned Jim Leighton is the most underrated and understated player, because Jim Leighton has 91 caps for Scotland, and you know that he's got 42 clean sheets for Scotland. Now, that's incredible. So that what we're saying is every second game for Scotland, he didn't lose a goal.
Yeah.
And 42, might be 45, but he's over 40. I'm saying 42 in case I get it wrong at 45, but I've said 45 in the past. But he had 91 caps, and every second game, it was largely due to Jim Leighton. We qualified for the Euro 96 tournament, and when I had a team, and we qualified for the World Cup 98 tournament.
Yeah.
And in each of these qualification campaigns, we played 10 games. And in 10 games for Euro 96, we lost 3 goals in 10 games. In 10 games for the World Cup 98, to get to France, we lost 3 goals. Now that tells you the defence was superb and the goalkeeping was unbelievable. Yeah. It was usually late. Sometimes it was Gorham.
Yeah.
Sometimes it was Leighton. But
we actually had David Priest, the ex-Aberdeen keeper. We had him on the other week, and we talked about Jim Leighton because I've said in the past that I will fight Jim Leighton's corner any day of the week.
Oh, aye.
Because a lot of people judge him basically on a short spell at Man United, and they've probably never seen anything else of him. And I just think he was an absolutely exceptional goalkeeper.
Oh yes, I mean, he's actually got more clean sheets than Andy Gorham's got caps. That's maybe my fault, but I actually, one of the hardest things I've had to do in football was to drop Jim Leighton for the Euro 96 finals down in England. Now, he had played in most of probably all the qualifying games, and at that point, Andy Gorham's eye was in Andy Gorham was unbeatable.
Mm.
And Tommy Burns was the Celtic manager. And Tommy says, Andy Gorham himself prevented us winning the league. It was Andy Gorham against Celtic. And now, we were down in England for Euro 96, and I told Jim 2 days before the game that I was leaving him out. I was playing Gorham, and he was shattered. He nearly a grown man in tears, nearly, but not quite. And I said, well, give you time to phone your family and what have you. So he says, does that mean bombed completely? I says, no, I'll see how the game goes. We're playing Holland in the first game, and if it goes okay, obviously I'll not be changing it. But or if Andy Gorham gets injured, so we drew 0-0 with Holland. And the day after it, he came to me, Jim Leighton, and he said, I want to have a word with you. I said, certainly, Jim. He says, I want to thank you. I says, thank me? The guy was shattered when I told him he wasn't playing. He says, why are you thanking me? He says, I'm thanking you for giving me warning that I wasn't going to be playing. Because if you told me the morning of the game and you put me on the bench, my head would have been so scrambled, I wouldn't even be in a fit state to be on the bench. And also, by telling me in advance, it enabled me to phone my family and say, look, I'm not playing. You don't need to come down to the game. Watch it on TV. And he said, so thanks for giving me a warning that I wasn't playing. Now, I learned a lesson from that if you're dropping an experienced player, give him due warning, give him the respect that he's due, that it's time to come to terms with it. But I also learn, never explain, never say Andy Gorham's a better goalie than you, because that's inappropriate. You just say it's a football decision. I've made a decision, and I think the more appropriate man for this game is Andy Gorham. And in fact, I didn't even say Andy Gorham. I just said, I'm leaving you out, Jim.
Yeah.
And if he said to me, who's playing? Well, there only was one other goalie. I'd have said Gorham. Now, if he said why, I said, look, it's a value judgment I've made. I'm not getting into details, because if you start getting into details, they can come back to you and say, well, he's better at short stopping than you, or he cuts out a cross, or his distribution. If you start getting into detail, you're in a discussion, you're in an argument. You don't want an argument with a player. And I think I learned, I listened to Alec Ferguson, I watched how he operated, and you just tell them, and it's a football decision, and it's based on what you think is appropriate for the game. It might be for the opposition, or it might be for your own team, but they've got to accept that. And the more you start to go into explanation and detail, the more comeback they have. And of course, it was the press would come at me if I left. I left McCoist out, for example. Why did you leave? The press would come at me. McCoist, he accepted it. He joked about it. When he scored that goal against Switzerland, I think it was.
Yeah.
And he came over and he hugged me. He jumped in me and he hugged me. And the press said to me afterwards, they said to him, why did you run jumping the manager? And you're excited. He said, I didn't go and hug him. I went to ask him why I wasn't on for the start in the other two games. Right. He's got the right attitude, McCoy. But, I think I found that if you're leaving someone out, tell them, give them straight to their face without being soppy about it and apologetic. You're doing your job. My job is to put a team that I think is the best team for the job, and you're not in it. And it's quite hard to tell an international player he's not playing, especially as he's not used to that, because he's used to being the top man at his club. But if you do it honestly and straight to their face and say, and they ask why, you say, the reason why is because I think I've got someone more appropriate for this particular game, and that's all. Don't go into details about passing or tackling or heading or anything like that. You'll get into a minefield, and then they can come back to you with moans and groans. But I learned that through Jim Leighton, and I've got the highest respect. I'm friendly with Jim Leighton to this day. Yeah, I think he was very foolish to retire with 91 caps, because he would have got 100, I'm sure. Well, I would have been there. I'm certain I would have had to pick him. because he was the best goalkeeper still.
Mm.
When he retired after the press gave him a hard time in a game at Tynecastle against Estonia, I think it was, and I had to put Dodgy on as a substitute to get us to win the game.
Mm.
You know, and I think Jim, they were winning 2-1. They'd scored 2 goals, and the press were blaming Leighton for at least one of them, maybe 2 of them. And there was one paper had a photo of him on the back page, and right across his face was the word flop. I mean, so a player can handle that, but it's not nice for his family, his wife, his kids to see flop. And I think his family said to him, look, we're not wanting any more of that. And he said to me, I'm giving up international football. You know, I tried my best to dissuade him, keep him, but he said, no, my family won't let me play on. They're not wanting to read any more of that again. You know, so it's terrible.
Craig, I'm wary of time here. Are you okay to continue on, or?
Yeah, I'm okay. I'm as long as I'm not boring you.
No, not at all. Listen, we've done shows where we've had to do them over 2 episodes because they've been like 3 hours, 2.5 hours, 3 hours or something. So this.
Well, I mean, I'll talk as long as you want. I'm happy, but I don't want to bore you. I'm serious about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, you're not boring us in the slightest. So I just wanted to make sure you were okay to continue.
Yes, I'm okay.
We'll just give Tom a wee second to come back. We're not even halfway through it yet, so.
I've got something in my screen. I've got a thing in my screen here. It says participants, and your names are here, and my name's there on the screen. So I'm seeing you okay.
Have you just got one person, or have you got the 3 boxes?
No, that's maybe participants. Wait a minute. I've got one on. That's one. I've got you now. That's all. And the small one, I know that's you.
Yeah,
I had a picture of Bobby Murdoch there.
Yeah. Have you still got the picture of Bobby?
Yes, it's in a small one. I've got on my main screen. I've got you, and I've got Bobby.
Right.
I don't see.
You probably want it the other way about. You want a bigger picture of Bobby and a smaller picture of me.
No, I want to know if am I in the middle of the screen, and I don't know. You see.
See, we can move stuff about on our own side. So whatever whatever you do just affects you. And
right. Okay, that's fine. I'm just looking here up at the top of the screen. There's a thing that says mute and it's stop video. It says participants. Participants. That would be. And then more at the end, it says more. What's that? Let's see. Then it says.
I need the
glasses on. Right. Raise hand, chat, meeting settings, minimize meeting, background, disconnect audio. No, don't want any of that. No. Sorry. I've got all I need. I've got you full screen, and I've got Bobby Murdoch in a small screen. Okay, so we're moving on from Bobby here. So on to the next one, and we've already spoken a bit about him. We've got Jim Baxter here. So it's described as an elegant midfielder who proved a constant thorn in England's side during the 1960s. He started at Raith Rovers, and a deal to move to Burnley fell through when £2,500 was asked as a fee. Instead, he signed for Rangers. His finest moment came when he scored both goals in a 2-1 win over England at Wembley, which you mentioned. That's hindsight, isn't it? From Burnley, £2,500, and they could have got Jim Baxter. I know, amazing, unbelievable. Yeah, well, as I said to you, I knew him well. I was when he came to start the pre-season training. I was the only player he knew because I was the guy that was on the treatment table when he signed. And the manager brought him. The manager was showing him around the dressing room and the treatment room and the bath and all, and out to this pitch. And there was I, again on the table, getting the knee treated by Davy Kinnear, the remedial gymnast. And Baxter sat and we chatted for a wee while. And therefore, when he came to start the training, I was the only one that he had met. And obviously we were alphabetically pegged, so I was changing beside him. So I think because of that, I never was in the Rangers team. And they used to put up the team on a Friday, and there were no subs in those days.
Yeah.
You know, it was a 12th man. So they put the team up. And if I never even looked at the team because I knew I wouldn't be in it. You know, if you were doubtful, you would look at the team. And I'll never forget, you'll like this wee story. The groundsman used to come in and he would look at the team. Davy McLeod was his name. And Davy would look at the team and he would turn around and the boys would listen to hear. He would always have an opinion, right? So the Daily Record in the morning had Henderson to get contact lenses. Now, wee Willie Henderson, he was a wee bit blind, you know, and he was just, oh, sir, where's that ball? You know, he was playing by ear. But anyway, Henderson to get contact, that was the headline in the paper. Now, the outside left at the time was Davy Wilson. And Davy Wilson was injured. And the replacement outside left was a guy called Bobby Hume. And Bobby Hume was well known, I think the first player that anyone knew in Scotland to wear contact lenses. So the outside left, Bobby Hume's got them, and the outside right to get them. So Davy McLeod came in, the boys were all nudging each other, and he looks at the notice board, and it's the headed note paper, Rangers Football Club, the big badge, and he reads the forward line out. He goes, Henderson, McMillan, Miller, Brand, and Hume. He's shaking his head. He says, 2 blind wingers. I don't know whether to line the park tomorrow or put curb stains along the side of it. That was brilliant. Well, of course, I never had to look, but occasionally my name would be at the bottom.
Yeah.
You know, 12th man, very occasionally. It was an easy game somewhere. But I knew I wasn't going to be in the starting team. So that was the Friday routine. And we would listen to Davy McLeod, and Davy would give an opinion what he thought of the team. Baxter was always in the team, so he didn't have to look. And I stayed in Hamilton, and 2 other players stayed in Hamilton. The captain at the time was Bobby Shearer, and there was another one, Eric Caldo. And so I got a lift in with them every morning. So, and I could beat them at golf if I couldn't do well at football. So I got some respect.
Yeah.
You know, for being a good golfer.
I think you're underplaying it there a bit. You're more than a good golfer, aren't you?
Well, I was. I'm not now. I was. Well, I was a low handicap. You know, I was in the last 8 of the Scottish boys at that time, and I was runner up in the Lanarkshire Boys Championship. But boys golf, under 18 golf, I was good at that level. But you know, I've never maintained it because my knees not helped, and the fact that I was playing and coaching football so much, you have no time for golf. And Rangers wouldn't let you play after a Wednesday anyway. You're not allowed to play golf. And I think that's sensible because golf's it's how can I put it? It's not a dynamic sport. It's you're standing around a lot. It's slow motion. And, you know, even with a caddy car, it's not ideal. Although you're out in the open and you're healthy and what have you. But I think after a Wednesday, the manager wouldn't want you to be doing anything that was make you sluggish for the Saturday. You want to be electric for Saturday.
Just on Jim Baxter, how much were you aware of him before, while he was at Raith Rovers, before he came to Rangers?
Not to the extent that anyone would imagine. You know, he was a very good player. People knew this was a very good player at Raith Rovers, just like David Cooper was a very good player at Clyde.
Yeah.
But I think Davy had more prominence than Baxter before he came, because Baxter came as a good player, but no one, I think, such a sensation as a player. Wonderful ability, but then to go with it, for instance, cockiness. The expert at nutmegging an opponent, things like that, and selling dummies to opponents, but just beautiful left foot. Everything about him was class, Jim Baxter. So I've got to say that, you know, people say, who are the best players that you've been on a pitch with? Well, he's one of them, without doubt. You mentioned Golzine, he's another top quality, classy player. So, you know, I was quite fortunate some very, very good players. That Dundee team that won the league, that was Linney, Hamilton and Cox. Hamilton and Cox were international fullbacks. Bobby Seath played for Burnley. Ewer and Wishart. Gordon Smith won the league with 3 different teams. Hearts, Hibs and Dundee. Smith, Andy Penman, Cousin, Gozine and Robertson. I mean, that was the main Dundee team.
Yeah.
So they were legendary at that time, and they couldn't do anything wrong. Now, Rangers weren't that much ahead, or weren't ahead in fact, because we won the league and we drew with them at home and beat them at Ibrox on the way to winning the league. And I think I said to you earlier, we lost at Celtic on the way there, because I was to play against Lennox, and we were beaten 2-1. Billy McNeil scored the winner with a header. So that wasn't so good, but we still managed to win the league. I'm trying to think. Baxter could be maybe the best quality player that I've been in a pitch with. You know, as a player, although I've been, I think, by far the best Scottish player of all time, in my opinion, is Kenny Dalglish. And I was still assistant manager of Scotland when Kenny was playing for Scotland. The last few internationals he played to get these 102 caps, and I was assistant manager. Andy Roxburgh was the manager. But Kenny, I'll give you a joke, a smile. Kenny, he's good with the one-liners. He passed the ball to me in the training session. You know, I don't know. It was a wee kind of passing thing, and he passed it to me, and I miscontrolled it. I said, Kenny, give me it again. Give us a pass again. I'll get the old skill back. He says, you can't get back what you never ever had. I thought it was good. But you know, it was a quick one-liner, Kenny. I'm sure he's used it before to others, but he put me in my place. But there was no nastiness. I think he's the best. But Alec Ferguson thinks Scotland's best ever player was Dennis Law. And I had to speak. You like this one? I had to speak at. Dennis was given the freedom of Aberdeen about 4 or 5 years ago, or maybe a bit longer than that. 6 years ago, I was the manager up there, and they said, "Would you say a few words about Dennis?" And I says, "Aye, I'd seen him at Aberdeen, met him a few times, but I didn't really know the guy." So I phoned Sir Alec. I says, "Alec, can you give us anything about it? I have to talk. I have to give a talk." He says, "Yeah, I'll tell you. I met Pelé once, and this is true." He says, "Pelé said to me, there's only one British player that could ever have played for Brazil, and that's Dennis Law." And he says, "No one else I can think of in England, Scotland, Ireland, Wales." He says, "A lot. Dennis Law is the only one that was good enough." So he says, "You can tell them that, Craig." And I says, "Aye, I'll tell them that at the dinner." And I thought, that's a wee bit. I'll add a wee line to it at the end. So I said, I spoke to Sir Alec to ask him about Dennis Law, and he says he's loved by both. Everyone in Manchester loves Dennis Law, whether you're City or United. You know, if you're one or other. Now, he played for them both. Usually, half of them will like you and half of them will be against you, but the whole city loves Dennis. And Alec, he told me that, and I said, Alec Ferguson said to me that Pelé told him there's only one British player could have played for, and I said, it's obvious that Pelé hadn't seen Billy Dodds. the place burst out laughing, you know, and I had to apologise to Dodgy. or I think I might have used Xander Diamond, but Pelé hadn't seen Xander Diamond or Billy Dodds. But why was I talking? You know, talking about international players, and I was a privilege to be in that dressing room. And the best Scottish team, I think, the best squad, I think, was the squad that went to Mexico in '86, and there were quite a lot of them in '82 that were in that one in Italy, where was that? Spain. 82, Spain. I was there as a Tartan Army guy. I was there supporting the team in '82, and then Sir Alec phoned me. I was at my work. I was teaching in the College of Education, and the girl came to me at the interval. She says, "There's a man been on the phone for you. You have to phone him back." he says, it's Alec Ferguson. And I says, aye, this is McCoist winding me up. You know? So, but she gave me a number, and it was an Aberdeen number. So at the interval, I went into the office at the College of Education in the air, and I phoned the number, and it was Alec. And I says, aye, he says, aye, Brune, just quickly, I have to take the Scottish team. They've asked me to do, Jock Stein passed away, and I have to take the team. I'm getting my staff sorted. I would like you to, he says, how would you like the holiday of a lifetime? I says, where are we going? He says, Mexico. And he says, and the SFA's paying. I said, oh, that sounds all right. He said, would you like to join us? You go on the staff. I said, I need to ask off my work. I'm not full-time through. I've got a job. He says, ask for a month's unpaid leave of absence then, and come and join us. Now, it just proves football's an old pals act, you know, because I was friendly with him. And I was a Clyde manager. I wasn't a manager of a Premier League team. And he said, I want you to join us. So I said, oh, that'd be great. He says, by the way, Brune, we've got 3 games to play, but we won't let that interfere with our enjoyment. That was a good line. I said, right, I'll be happy. And I'm inviting Walter Smith, Archie Knox, and you. I says, that's great. I'll look forward to that. So they let me off, and that was my introduction to the SFA. And when we went to Mexico, and again, without Dalglish, I hasten to add that, because with Dalglish, we'd have qualified, I'm sure. We went without him. And when Stevie Nicol missed the biggest certainty in front of the goal against Uruguay you've ever seen, I could have walked from the dugout to the bench at the side and scored it. And Stevie missed it, you know, and he was upset. But anyway, we had a draw, I think, the game. We couldn't beat them. And if we'd won the game, we'd have qualified. Yeah. And there's nobody going to tell me that if Dalglish had been playing, we wouldn't have qualified. But that was unlucky for Alec. And they offered him the Scotland job, as I think everyone knows. They decided to stay with Aberdeen, to stay working. And then that was in the summer, that was in June. And then by September, October, Manchester United were doing badly. And they were struggling. And I think they asked Gordon Strachan about the man at Aberdeen. And Gordon said, if you want success, get him down here. But if you want to rock the boat, don't bring him down. Because he'll put a tick of dynamite below this football club. And everybody will be jumping to attention. So the rest's history.
Yeah.
He didn't go to the Scotland job. He went to Manchester United in September. And Andy got the job with Scotland. And I got the job of the under-21 team and assistant with the national team. So I had a great job. I was part-time assistant and full-time under-21 manager. The fixtures matched in those days. They don't match anymore. It's a separate tournament. But then if we played Portugal with the first team, the under-21s played the night before. So we go on the same flight, come back in the same flight. The same if we had a home game. You know, when they came to play here, we would play at Hampden, and the under-21s would play at Motherwell or at Kilmarnock or Tynecastle or somewhere, so that the opposition could bring their team in the same flight. Yeah. And that was a great arrangement, but for whatever reason, they've changed that now. So you need to have a full staff for the under-21 team, rather than share, as we used to do.
And of course, you took the under-16 team at the World Cup final.
Yes, we did well with that team.
What was that? What was that experience?
Well,
like
that was great. I think before that, one team that's we'll never get any credit for was the under-20 team. We went to the World Championship because Alex Smith had the under-18 team with Ross Matthew, I think, and they were second in Europe in the European Championship, and the top 3 teams in under-18 went to the World Cup under-20, and it was in Chile. So I got asked to take the team because Alex Smith had taken it. Alec was a manager at, I think at that time at Dundee United for a while, but he couldn't get off his club job. So I was asked to take the Scotland under-20 team, and that was 1987. And it was a smashing team we had. It was a wonderful tournament in Chile. And we won our group and we got to the quarter-final. and we were very unlucky because we were beaten by Germany, West Germany, in penalties after extra time. So that was a good tournament. Big attendances there in Chile at that. The average attendance at that tournament was 27,000, which is good for under 20 World Cup. Then 2 years later, the under 16 team were in the World Cup final, which was in Scotland. And as a host country, we were there. So I got asked to take the team. Ross Matthew was an outstanding coach with all the young teams. And Ross was still there because Ross was working with every young team, the under 18, 17, 16, a lot. So, but Ernie Walker asked me to take the team. And we got to the World Cup final in Scotland. And the attendances were big. The gates were shut at Tynecastle in the semi-final. 28,000, I think. And then the final, 52,000 at Hampden. And again, we lost in penalties after extra time. It was a heartbreak.
Was that
Brian O'Neill?
Sorry, was that Saudi Arabia? What was that?
Yes.
Saudi
Arabia. They were older. There's no doubt. But so I mean, it was a marvellous event, that one in Scotland. People are saying, can Scotland cope with a tournament? Could we host a tournament? Well, the under 16 is not like the full World Cup, but we're hosting games in this European Championship coming up. Yeah. And I think Scotland, we get 3 games in Scotland. Our team's in 2 of them.
Yeah.
I think the fans in Scotland like a game of football and a good quality game. So I'm sure that it'll be a big success in Scotland this time. But that under 16 tournament was a huge success. FIFA still talk about it. They say, in Scotland it was, and the success depends on the success of the host country.
Yeah.
If your own team's doing well, the interest is increased. So we were doing well in that tournament, and the only real man that caught the imagination was Paul Dickoff, and he played a few games with the national team, but not so many. Brian O'Neill played for the national team. I'm trying to think.
Andy McLaren was there.
Sorry?
Andy McLaren was there as well.
Andy McLaren, I gave Andy a cap when he was playing for Kilmarnock. He played against Poland for the national team. Yeah, Andy's doing a wonderful job with regard to alcoholism and drugs and things. They get him to do talks, and he admits that he was right off the rails. And he's got a book. It's a wonderful book. I'm trying to remember this. The name of his book. It's just one word.
Yeah, Addicted.
No, it's
Addicted.
like that. It's like that. It's one word, like Addicted. It's I wish I could remember. I might be wrong. It might be Addicted.
But Andy's looking it up. Now.
Look it up. Andy McLaren's book. It's
Tormented.
Tormented. It's Tormented is the book. One word. I said to you. I'll tell you, it's a brilliant book. Tormented. Well done, Andy.
that was the internet. We had Andy McLaren on in an early podcast as well, when he was brilliant as well, really honest, opening up and talking. He's a great man.
Well, I've heard them talking to young players. They bring them, the SFA bring them to talk to them, to give them a lecture about staying in the straight and narrow and that, and he's outstanding.
Yeah.
I've heard him. He was a smashing boy and a very good player.
He was also doing great work in getting young players to actually, that maybe couldn't afford football, to actually get them out there and playing football. So he was doing great work with that.
Well, Andy's a credit to the game, but when I went down to Reading with one or two others, Tommy Burns signed him. Then he came back up to Scotland again. He went from Dundee United to Reading and back up to Kilmarnock. But I can't speak highly enough of Andy McLaren.
Yeah. Okay, listen, but moving on to the next photograph in this section, and it's the Arsenal 1970-71 double winning team, the cup and league, and it's the Frank McClintock on the shoulders of the rest of the team. So
Yeah. Well, Frank McClintock, very, very highly regarded down there. And interestingly, my roommate in Dundee went down to Arsenal, Ian Muir.
Mm-hmm.
And now Ian Muir was a centre-half as well. And you could have a situation whereby Frank McClintock sees competition for me, and I better be wary here or not be so welcoming. But he said, Frank McClintock couldn't have been kinder, couldn't have been nicer, very supportive when I went down to Arsenal. So I don't know Frank McClintock. I've met him a few times when I'm in London and going to games. He passed it, but his career was further on, coming to an end. So I never picked Frank McClintock, but he was an outstanding player and a smashing guy. And he was friendly with Ian Muir, who was my friend down there. So the Arsenal connection with Scotland was, obviously the manager for a while was Bruce Rioch. Then there was Muir and McClintock.
George Graham.
George Graham was the manager as well. And I remember that the year after Dundee won the league, we were put out the Scottish Cup early for whatever reason. It must have been an offside goal. And Arsenal were put out the FA Cup. So we took down and played them down at Arsenal. And I got a game. I got a game when it wasn't maybe it was important, prestige enough. But I remember we had to play against Arsenal, and I had to play against the glamour boy at the time, a guy called George Eastham, and in midfield. And this boy George Eastham again, he roasted me. He putting it round one side, me running around the other, putting it through my legs, calling me a dummy. I'm not kidding. We actually did well. We drew the game down there, and then the next year we came up to Aberdeen, and again both times we got a draw with Arsenal. But I'll never forget going down to play. And the night before, we went to see Chelsea were in the first division at the time, and Blackpool were in the first division. Friday night game was Chelsea and Blackpool, and Tommy Dock was the manager of Chelsea. So we went. They took the whole team, the Dundee team, to see this game. And we went over to see Chelsea. So we had a nice weekend in London. The only problem was we had to play Arsenal, and they were a good team. But it's quite a thrill for me as a young boy to play at the old stadium at Highbury. Arsenal played, and Eastham was a wonderful player, and far too good for me.
Okay, so on the next page there is the book club, which I think so the Sportsman Book Club, and there's 3 types of membership. So you've got a football, or it says soccer only, you've got cricket only books, or you've got a combined membership. Now the membership is for a year and requires you to buy 6 books within that period, and you can get a free Shankly book, which is by Bilt Shankly, and that's given to each new membership. Other books in there include people you've spoke about already, Tommy Docherty and Dennis Law. There are other books that I can see in there. Now, there we go.
There's a Shankly book.
Were you part of this club? Is that why you got the book?
No, I've got a thing about, I read autobiographies.
Yeah.
Learn a great deal about it. I'm not seeing in my screen what you're seeing. Are you seeing the Shankly?
Yeah, I can see that, the book, yeah.
Yeah, you've got it.
Yep.
I'm trying to see if I can get. I just see Shankly free, but I think it would be an earlier one. It probably wouldn't be that one. It would be an earlier one, would it?
Yeah, it's certainly the cover looks different. It's a different cover.
Yeah. But this is a biography. It's not an autobiography. It's written by Stephen F. Kelly. I don't know him, but you're still. I'm trying to get myself onto this video, but
have you? What way have you got your iPad? Is it long way or is it up the way?
It's long way. It's a long way. I'm looking along the front. It says leave, then it says zoom. Maybe.
Tom, have you any idea of how to get the main screen?
Fun. It says zoom. Wait, I'll try zoom now. Shoot the breeze. It says here, host Tom Brogan, blah blah blah. Enabled, but I don't need to see myself, but
I think if there must be an option to minimise the like us, me and Tom.
well, your full screen.
Right, you don't want that. I don't.
And the small screen I've got on the right hand side of my. I don't.
Maybe click on the small screen, Craig.
The small screen is the page out there. No,
Yeah.
when
So-
I click on it, it changes. I get Shankly free, big, and you small. I'd rather have you big. You know.
All right, okay, then click on
No,
the other.
don't worry about myself. If I'm there, that's fine.
Oh no, yeah, you're fine. We can see.
Yeah, okay.
Right, okay, moving on to the next bit in the. So we're going to look at the fear-haunting Dundee. So new Dundee manager Donald Mackay is pictured and discusses the new season after being relegated from the Premier League last season. He says, "Our obvious aim must be promotion. Dundee are too good a side." Mackay has had a shake-up at the club. Frank Upton is the new chief scout. Hugh Robertson is looking after the youngsters, and Jockey Scott will now combine playing with coaching. The thought of second division football is a frightener for Dundee. They have remained full-time. They've also gone through a number of years of upheaval, and the fans are used to a better level of football and performance. Mackay knows he has a tough job in his hands, but he's up for it. Now, just as a wee spoiler for this season, Dundee would be promoted straight back up to the Premier at the first attempt, finishing second behind Hibs.
Well, I know Donald Mackay.
Yeah.
And I knew him. And he was the goalkeeper of United for years. And he went down south, and he came back as we hear there. I don't know what information what you want me to say, but he was a really enthusiastic, knowledgeable guy in football.
Mm-hmm.
I think he was at Coventry in England. I'm not just so sure, but he was down south anyway. And he was a United goalkeeper who crossed the street. Now, one or two have crossed the street. The most famous one we all know is Jim McLean.
Yeah.
He was coach of Dundee, and then he crossed the street to be the manager of United and became a legend there. So Donald Mackay, I think, did the opposite. He went over to be the manager at Dundee for a while, if my memory serves me correctly. Am I right?
Yeah.
And when you were talking about Dundee there, you were talking about Dundee, not Dundee United. No, that's right. So Donald was a goalie, a good goalkeeper, but very, very serious about his football. You know, he would. You know, there was a lot of kidding and joking amongst the lads, but with Donald, it was life is real, life is earnest. You know, you don't let your guard down. You don't have a joke. You're serious. But a lovely guy and a very, very good footballer, goalkeeper, and also efficient as a manager as well.
Yeah, I think he was behind Hamish McAlpine. I think he was. I don't know if he still is, but he was second highest appearances for a goalkeeper for United. So, I mean,
Hamish McAlpine's he's the club ambassador up there. See him at all the games. Hamish is a legend, obviously. So is Donald. You know, but Hamish was, to my knowledge, not at any other club, not at any other big club anyway. He might have gone.
Did he go to Wraith Rovers?
He might have gone. That's what I'm saying. He might have gone to the league below.
Yeah.
He didn't play for another first division team. But outstanding. Yeah. Fell out with Jim McLean on a tour. I think they were in Hong Kong, and Jim sent him home. That's an in story at Tannadice. I'm not just too sure of the background to it, all the whole story there, but I know that there was an incident in a training game. I think it was in Hong Kong, and Jim sent him packing.
Yeah. I remember cause there was a team photo that he wasn't in it.
Right.
Because he was out of favour at that point in time.
That's right. Well, you don't mess with Jim McLean. You just get rid of you.
So one of the names mentioned there, and we'll come on to this in a little bit later on, is Hugh Robertson, who obviously was in Hammy and the Hamsters with you.
Yes, aye.
Yes. So
I should have had the tape for you, but I've got a disc of it. But Hugh Robertson is from Ayrshire, from Auchinleck. His father, quite interestingly, I used to tease him. His father was the provost of Auchinleck.
right.
Now, people in Lanarkshire, where I came from, never heard of Auchinleck. Like Cumnock and Auchinleck, that's the hotbed of Scottish junior football. And I said to Alec Ferguson once, I was writing an article for the Back Pass magazine, and it was about football in Cumnock. And I was trying to get, the players like the Burleys, George Burley and Craig Burley and Billy Dodge, and people from Cumnock, and the neighbouring village is Auchinleck. So I was talking to Alec about something else. I said, by the way, Alec, have you any stories you can tell me? I'm getting an article to write about Auchinleck. He says, yeah. I says, what can you tell me? He says, that's where I was brought up in Govan. He says, that's where we went on holidays. I said, you what? He says, wait, and I thought he was pulling my leg. He says, no, we went on holiday to Auchinleck from Govan. He said, because they had a wonderful outdoor swimming pool. Now I checked that out, that exists, but they've got it indoor now. They've covered it. But there was an outdoor swimming pool, and he says, we loved it. We went down to Auchinleck on holiday. Nowadays, they're going to Dubai and La Manga and places like that, Las Vegas almost on holiday. But he says, we went to Auchinleck on holiday. So at that time, the provost of Auchinleck would be Hugh Robertson's father, I think. His father. So Hugh was a boy from Ayrshire, Robertson, and he played brilliantly for Dundee outside left. He couldn't misplace a pass. Even accidentally, he wouldn't give a bad pass. His passing was terrific. His control of the ball was excellent. And his Ayrshire patter, he'd always a story to tell you. With Hughie. So when you mention Hugh Robertson, he's in the original famous 11 Dundee players that won the championship and semi-final of the European Cup. Hugh Robertson.
Yeah. So across on the next page we have Tartan Talk with Derek Johnston, and the heading says, when I beat Jim Watt. So it says, world lightweight champion Jim Watt was in serious trouble recently, according to Derek Johnson. Derek says, we were both taking part in a Pro-Am golf tournament, and yours truly walked off with a glittering piece of silverware, with a round Jack Nicklaus would be hard pressed to emulate. I showed my prize to Jim, and quick as a flash he said, it's good to see a Rangers player winning something. Now, Derek mentioned that he's also recently just passed his driving test, so now he won't have to rely on others to get him around. In fact, he was struggling with all the travel from Dundee to Rangers by train when he first moved there, and it was beginning to get to him. There's a photograph with this as well, and it shows Colin McAdam bulleting a header in against Aberdeen at Ibrox, and we can see in the background that the terrace in there has all been ripped down, and it's a bit of a work site at the moment. So this was obviously just as the rebuild was going. And
I'm trying to get it on my screen here. I see it. Yeah.
It just looks really, really strange to see it like that.
It does indeed. This is Derek Johnson we're talking about.
Yeah.
Derek's a legend at Rangers. He's a smashing guy and a lovely storyteller. You should get him in your programme here. You'll be entertained.
He's definitely on the wish list. The very fact is that he's this Tartan Talk feature with him. I don't know how many years it lasted, but it seemed to have been there for an eternity, and it's great. Well, great for a story.
Aye, well, I'm sure he would be, because he's always got a story. Like Derek, and he's the nicest guy and the most humble too. You'd expect when you go to, he's in the boardroom. When you go to Ibrox now, there are one or two ambassadorial jobs around the football club, and Wally Henderson's got one of them, and Derek Johnson's got another, and Richard Goff's got another. So you see the old timers of my era there. Willie, for example, Willie and I signed it. Willie came at the same time as I did to Rangers. McKinnon, Henderson, Davy Provan, and myself, and three of them made it and this other one, he didn't really get rid of him. But you know, they were good boys and good players. Now Derek came after that. He's a bit younger, but he was outstanding as a striker for Rangers, and still is very well respected at the football club because he's wearing the blazer and he's shaking hands with everyone on the match day. So what we're saying is he gets in for nothing.
So we look at the next one here. We come to something that mentions yourself here. So this is Simpson Spur for McWilliams. And the article says, David McWilliams, the current Clyde goalkeeper, is trying to prove that keepers improve with age. At 30 years old, he is still one of the most consistent number ones in Scottish football. McWilliams says, Craig Brown is such a knowledgeable manager that everyone wants to play for him. He's dedicated to this club, and we try to do likewise on the pitch. Clyde fans haven't had an awful lot to get excited about in recent years, but every player at Shawfield is determined to do something about rectifying that situation. Promotion is the main aim, and I'm anxious to play my part. And he says he'd love to play in the Premier Division before retiring, and would love to do that with Clyde. McWilliams' career highlight was playing for Airdrie in the Scottish Cup final in a 3-1 defeat to Celtic 5 years previous to this magazine. Paul Wilson put two past him, but McWilliams says, we were never outclassed in any way by Celtic. It was 1-1 at one stage, but Celtic got their second shortly after our equaliser, and it took the wind out of our sails. And he's pictured there with quite a bushy beard and unkempt hair. Just as a wee spoiler on the season, Clyde this season you'd finish 8th out of 14 teams this season on 40 points. Now looking at the table, it was interesting. It was Queen's Park that won, but between the 8th position and 2nd place was only 6 points between them, so it was a really, really tight league, and it was 2 points for a win. Queen's Park won the league in 50 points. They won 16 and drew 18 of their 39 games, which is just incredible that, you know, you're just under half of your games you've drawn and you've still went on to win the league. That just shows how tight it was.
The leagues were tight. I was about to say to you that we were the only part-time team in the league, but that can't be the case if Queen's Park were there. Pardon me, because I know that when I was at Clyde, you know, I was 9 years at Clyde, and there was a time when we were the only part-time team in the league we were in, you know. But Big David McWilliams was a very, very good goalkeeper. Big, powerful, terrific build for it. And he mentioned a game there, Airdrie, in the cup final. Yeah. Well, that rings a bell with me because I was the assistant manager of Motherwell, and we played Airdrie in the semi-final, and he was the goalkeeper of Airdrie, right? But our goalkeeper was Stuart Rennie. Stuart Rennie, you could hardly believe this, overcarried the ball. I don't think I've ever seen it again. He you know, you're only allowed 4 steps in, so he took more than 4 steps. He overcarried, and an indirect free kick was given inside the penalty box. Yeah. And I don't know, the two fullbacks there, Johnson and Caldwell, George Caldwell and Paul Johnson. And I think Caldwell knocked it to Johnson, and he scored. The indirect free kick got them into the final. That beat Motherwell. Well, that's the Airdrie team he's talking about. Yeah. But he was in that Airdrie team. Then I got him to Clyde. He was a very good Clyde goalkeeper. Now this magazine's 1980. 18, yeah. We won the league the next year.
Next season, yeah.
Yeah, I think.
You're 9 points clear the next season. So Queen's Park would have went up this season, and then so it might have been this season coming, the season after that you're thinking about. You were the only full-time or part-time team.
Well, we were. What did I say? We were regrouping. we were getting our act together. Yeah. So that we got up the next season. But Big Davy, I remember him well, a smashing goalie, and I signed him because he was available, and I'd seen him play for Airdrie so very well against Motherwell when I was the assistant manager of Motherwell. Because Airdrie were in the top. There were only 2 leagues. Am I right? I'm not sure at that time. Yeah. Maybe it changed to another 3 leagues. But when we played the semi-final of the cup, Davy was the Airdrie goalie, but our goalkeeper overcarried, and that was it. I can't speak highly enough of him. We had Dennis Connican in goal. We had John Arrell was probably the one that was longest with me at Clyde. I had several goalies, and when I ran out of goalies one time, the goalie injured, Paul Kearney. We had Paul Kearney in goal. We had a goalkeeping crisis, and I got Bobby Clark out of retirement. He was 40 to play, and one of the games was against the Bankies.
Right.
And I'm actually frightened to say this because I think they scored 5 goals. And Bobby wouldn't thank me for saying it. I need to check it, but Bobby played. I think he played 4 or 5 games for us. One of them was at Hearts at Tynecastle, and Hearts must have been the way they are at the moment because he had a clean sheet at Tynecastle against Hearts, and the Hearts were in our league at the time. And then, but I think the Bankies came to Glasgow and scored 5. So I'm not saying any more about that. 4 of them were offside.
Yeah. Okay, on the same page, there's another article, and it's Tough Talking Clooney shakes up Saints. So this is Jim Clooney at St Mirren, and it said,
"We stopped talking all right."
Yeah, it says Jim Clooney is not a man to mince his words. The St Mirren players have been left with no doubt what he demands from them in every game. After a 1-0 loss to Partick Thistle, he said, If I see my players giving their all until the final whistle, I will be satisfied. We've been making chances, but not sticking them away. When you stop creating chances, you know you're in trouble." Now, Clooney led Saints into Europe for the first time in the UEFA Cup when they beat Elfsborg 2-1 in Sweden. On that game, Jim says, "I don't normally single out individuals, but Jackie Copland and Doug Sumner were outstanding. I was particularly pleased how the team responded to letting in an early goal." The article also mentions the move of ex-St Mirren player Ian Munro to Stoke City. He was on his way to sign for Alicante before it fell through. Peter Weir and Billy Abercrombie are also mentioned in the article as exciting talents in the Saints team. Now, as a wee spoiler, St Mirren finished this season 4th in the league on the same points as Rangers. Now, Jim Clooney was sacked in November 1980, so he was actually sacked the month that this magazine was published. After a 2-1 victory over Celtic at Celtic Park, Ricky McFarlane, the physio, took over. And apparently the reason for his sacking was allegedly that he had offended a director's wife on a flight home from St Etienne where he swore at her. Now, I don't know how much is true in that. You probably know a bit more about that than myself, Craig.
No, I don't actually. I don't know about that. I'm the first I've heard of that, but I know Jim Clooney.
Yeah.
And I don't know what club he was managing. Maybe it was Kilmarnock. The club he was managing in 1982 when the World Cup was in Spain. And I'll tell you why. Because the SFA or the SFL, one or other, I'm not sure what it was, the league or the Football Association, took all the managers free of charge to the World Cup. They took us to Spain. And Jim Clooney was next door to me. We were roomed alphabetically, and Jim was next door to me, right? But that maybe just by coincidence. I think he was either St Mirren or the Kilmarnock manager at the time. But anyway, the drill was that before we went out at night, this was when there wasn't a game on. The nights there wasn't a game. Before we went out at night, we met in a room in the ground floor. And it was Benny Rooney's room, and they called it Benny's bar because you took your own drink, right, to Benny's room and you put it in the what do you call it, the kitchen bit of the room. That Benny had a lovely room, big room, and you'd walk in there at night and you would see bottles of this and bottles of that and bottles of the next thing. So Willie McLean was across the corridor from me, and well, he said, "We'll have a bottle of white wine. Right, we'll go easy. We'll have a white wine." And so I'll never forget this. I put the white wine into my beedie and put cold water in it to cool it because it was roasting hot. We're staying in Puerto Banús. Yeah, and I remember the Andalusia Hotel. I remember it vividly, and all the managers were there. And of course, the team, Jock Stein had the team, and Jim McLean was with the team. So the rest of us, including Alec Ferguson, wasn't with the team at that time, and he was there, and Archie Knox was there. So all the manager pals. Next door to me was Jim Clooney. So I put this bottle of wine, it was a litre bottle of wine, to do that. That's to do the two of us, McLean and myself. We'll have this white wine. And I put it in the beedie, and I ran the beedie tap, and I left the plug so that the water was running right through. You know, it wasn't very economical with regard to the water supply. But anyway, it was to keep it cool. And I ran it through. Now, obviously, the bottle must have dislodged and moved and jammed the plug hole. Aye. So then the water wasn't getting away, so it was coming over the side of over the side. And my room was right next door to Jim Clooney's. So, of course, I didn't know. We must have been away for a couple of hours, and this water would be running for a couple of hours. I'm admitting this, but I've never said this before. And the water's running over the beedie where it was cooling to keep it cool for the drinking at night in Benny's bar. And of course, we came up, and I couldn't believe I come up in the room, the carpet. There was a carpet in a wee bit of the room, but it was, you know, mainly the marble floors, and there was water everywhere. You were squelching through the water. And, well, I had forgotten who was next door, Jim Clooney. Well, the next minute, there's a knock at my door. Yeah, that one. I have never, ever had such a roasting of language in my life. And then he says, "You're a skill teacher, an effing skill teacher." I just thought that, no brains. What? How the hell did? And I said, "Well, Jim, you know," and I was trying to explain what I had done, and the bottle had dislodged. And so, well, I've had many a shuriken, many a blast from a manager and from a parent or from an adult, but I have never had such a rollicking as I got from Jim Clooney. It was nothing to do with football. It was to do with the water had got through the wall into his room, and he was squelching about in his room at the side of his bed. So I wasn't too popular with Jim Clooney, but he always remembered that story, and he always said he cooling any bottles of wine recently. I said, "Well, I haven't got a bidet to cool them in." Anyway, so that's nothing to do with football, but the man was a warrior, and I was petrified. You know, Willie McLean's a small fella, and I'm a small fella. He was blasting the two of us, a couple of idiots. Yeah, Jesus, so and so. Anyway, so I would imagine if he had to reprimand a player in his team when he was a manager, I think it would be a bit of a rollicking the player would get, because I got it from, not for football, but if it was affecting his living, I think it would have been even worse.
So basically what you're saying is you can believe that he swore at the director's wife? Oh,
I'm quite sure he could. I think the director's wife could have heard him in Fuerte Menus. Paisley.
You know, one of the interesting things I found out, we've already spoke about substitutes or lack of substitutes, but he was actually the first player to be substituted on in Scottish football. Oh. He replaced Archie Gemmell against none other than Clyde in August 1966. So I thought
66, yeah. There were no substitutes before that, that's right. And then it was for injury.
Yeah.
For injury only, and then it became two substitutes. But then it was getting abused, so they said for any reason. But it had to be for injury initially. So he was the first, was he?
Yeah, as I say, after 23 minutes, he replaced Archie Gemmell, so that suggests injury, yeah. But what's your thoughts on how it's went now? So it's almost like soon it's going to be you can replace your whole team the way the number of...
Well, I think obviously it's exceptional because of the coronavirus. You know, but before the virus, I think it was still too many. I'll give you an example. If you're an international manager, not now, but even when I had the job, you actually had more players on the bench at a tournament than you had on the pitch, because you took 23 players to a European Championship or a World Cup. So you've got 12 players not playing. So you've got 12 on the bench and you've got 11 on the pitch. So that is a major management problem, you know, keeping these guys happy. I mean, maybe the hardest training session I've ever been asked to take, I was over in Mexico, and Alex says to me after the first game, they had played the opening game against Denmark, I think it was, and one or two got a knock, and they put on the subs, and Charlie Nicholas, he got cemented, really got assaulted in that game.
Yes, Denmark.
Denmark. And he said to me, take those that didn't play for a session. Now, obviously, every sub had been used, and so therefore I've got at that time a training session with about 7 or 8 players just. Now, there's not the same body in the group when there's a small number like that. So later on, when we get the job, when Andy get the job and I get the job, we always took 6 young players, 6 under 18 international players, so that we could always get a full-scale match. See, when Alec had them over there in Mexico preparing, we were in America, New Mexico preparing, and they wanted a full-scale practice match. So Walter Smith had to play. If somebody was injured, I had to play. You know, Archie Knox, you know, to make 2 11-a-side teams, because there always were strains and injuries and what have you, even in the preparation. So it was farcical. I think when a staff member has to play in a game, it devalues the game. Now, even if the staff player is an international player. Now, I mean, Smith, Knox and I, none of us was an international player. Fergie was actually. Alec played for Scotland. You know, he did. He went on one of these tours.
1967 tour.
You're clued in, Tom. So Alec was an international player, but we were bad enough players without having to try and play with top class, very fit internationalists. So we always took 6 extra young players to a tournament. And, you know, I recommended that to Shelley Kerr there and to anyone. I'm not saying Stevie Clark will ask me, but if he did, I'd say to him, when you go to the tournament, take some extra players so that you've got a full training session if you need it. And you've got helpers to lay out the pitch and move the goals and get the laundry collected and do that. And these guys were brilliant at that. You know, one of them was Paul Hartley, for example. He's now a manager. Paul was one of the young players that came with us. Another one was Scott Gemmell, Brian O'Neill, the young under-18 international boys. It was a good arrangement, and that would be the first bit of advice I would offer anybody if he's going to a tournament, to take some young players to stiffen up the squad, and they've got jobs to do to help the kit man, to lay out the pitch and to make sure the table's tidy when we leave it after a meal, things like that. I mean, I was a wee bit kind of fussy about these things, you know, and about, you know, if you look at the Scottish team before the opening game against Brazil and France, they're lined up for the anthem. Look at how immaculate they are. Every jersey's in. The stockings are all at the same turnover. There's no tape, white tape around the socks or anything like that. And they're immaculate. And they're all singing the anthem.
Yeah.
Because we taught them at the Anglos that didn't know it. We had to maybe teach them that. And if you don't know the words or you forget them, make your mouth go. So that it looks as though you're committed, you know, because the camera gets right along. And, you know, and I remember an international, Steve Nichol, was putting tape around his socks to keep the shin guard. I says, wait a minute, Stevie. It was red socks we'd on that day at Hampden. I says, that's unacceptable. You're putting that white tape around. Are you a trotting pony or are you a footballer? He's looking at me, you know. I says, that is not. He says, well, we're at Liverpool, you know, and we've got red socks and we can do that at Liverpool. We put the tape around. I says, Stevie, this is not a pub team Liverpool you're playing for. This is Scotland. This is Scotland you're playing for. You know, well, he smiles and he got the message and he took the tape off. So a wee bit of humour helps to get the message over. But why am I'm digressing there a bit. I'm away. Oh, substitutions. You know, and that's another whole session. Substitutions, because I say to you and I say to Tom and yourself, how many reasons are there for substituting a player? Give me a number and I'll not ask you because it's unfair. But I know if I ask that to a group of players or manager or anybody, they'll all say 3, 4. And I say, well, let's see how many we can get. And you put your team down and you say, how many reasons are there for substituting a player? Now I can get 11, now 12 for substituting a player. So they always think if you're substituted, it's because you're injured or you're on a bad game. I'll not say the word that they usually say. Begins with SH. Yeah. So they'll say that, but when you get a team together, and I always had a team meeting, I said, look guys, somebody who's good at, there's the flip chart, write it up, reasons for substitution, and let's get them down there. And you'll get 11 or 12. And therefore, it's not only for having a bad game or being injured. There are other reasons, or even tactical. Pardon me. I could go down. I would forget them, but I could go down through them if you want, but it'd take too long. I'm going on and on. So, but there are 11, 12. We had 11, and one of the 11th one we got, I do it with every team I've ever had. The 11th one we would get is a penalty decider. And you've got a guy on the bench who's a better penalty taker than anybody else on the pitch. Like Kenny McLean was a perfect example. He was on the game, But if you knew Kenny McLean as I do, you would know if you got a penalty kick, Kenny McLean will put his left foot in that and he'll score. So that's what happened. But Kenny was on anyway, and he was picked. But you might, games getting near the end, it's going to penalties. So you take somebody off that's not going to want to take a penalty and put Kenny on and put him in the penalty taker. But better than that, to give me the 12th reason, was Van Gaal, the big Dutch manager with the Holland team in the World Cup. What did in the penalty shootout? What did he do? He substituted his goalkeeper because he had a better shot stopper. So you would never think of that as a reason for substituting a player, but it is a reason.
Yeah.
Another one is some clubs you've got to get on. You've got to go on the pitch, not off the bench, to get the full bonus. Now, I'm a manager at Motherwell. We're playing Aberdeen, and this is true. And I like to wind up the Aberdeen people and tell them this. I say, we're playing you up at Aberdeen, and we're winning 3-0 at Aberdeen with Motherwell. And I look over my shoulder, and there's 20 minutes to go, and Aberdeen are hopeless. And we're 3 up, and I says to Archie Knox, my colleague Archie, we'll get the young lads on. No. They might score. I said, Archie, they'll never score. We'll get the young lads on. Well, it was young lads. Jamie Murphy, Stevie Lawless, went to Livingston, and then who was another young lad, Bob McHugh, I think. Put the 3 of them on. Well, you'd have thought you'd have given them a lottery win.
Yeah.
Because they doubled their bonus for getting 10 minutes at the end. Because they get the full bonus if they went on. And if they stayed on the bench, they get half bonus. And of course, they get on at Pittodrie. It ended up 3-0. There was no goals scored in the time they were on. And they were, you could tell you'd given them a boost, you'd given them the extra money, doubled the half bonus that they were getting for being on the bench. So that's another. You want the boy to get his applause, he's on a yellow card. Frightened, he gets another yellow and he gets sent off. So if you add all the reasons up, you'll get 11 or 12. But I'm going on and on here and digressing, but I get carried away when I start talking.
No, listen, that's a really interesting. I've never thought it that way before, and I think I'm probably going to go away and try and jot down. I'm going to try and get a 13th for you. Okay.
I would love that. I'd love that.
Yeah. Okay, so
sorry, Andy. So just before we move on, I've found that Clyde game you were talking. Clark scored. So just Clyde Bank at Shawfield, September 18th, 1982, and it finished Clyde 3, Clyde Bank 5. And the Clyde team was Bobby Clark, Davy Ray, Tommy McQueen, Billy McLaren, Paul Flexney, John Brogan, Robert Riley, Jim Docherty, Derek McCutcheon, Tommy O'Neill, and Pat Nevin.
Well, I'm going to tell you something. You must have had some team if you beat that team 5-3.
The team was Jim Gervais, Jim Fallon, Budgie McGee, Jimmy Given, Martin Hughes, Bobby Williamson, Tommy Coyne, and your man Jerry McCabe.
Well, it was McCabe that made the difference.
That's probably...
No, seriously, I remember we lost 5 goals. And that... and I didn't know... I had actually forgotten that we'd scored 3. But I said that it was 5-3. You only beat us by 2 goals. But that was a great Clydebank team that I had there.
Yeah.
What was the year, Tom?
And I think our team was a good team. Clyde was a good team.
That was 1982, September 1982.
Yeah, you were reading through that. That sort of is probably the first Clydebank team I saw. I think that's probably when I started going to Kilbowie, so that would have been the team that I saw.
See, Bill Monroe, the manager, was he?
Yeah. Well, it was actually Sam Henderson that day. But Bill Monroe must have left just before that.
All right. Because Bill Monroe was one of the guys that was over with the managers in Spain.
Right.
He was in Benny's bar, along with the rest of us.
Yeah.
Bill Monroe. Smashing guy, Bill.
I was lucky to meet Bill a couple of years ago. He's a lovely guy, yeah.
I can't tell you any lies, you two, because you've got the resources there, you've got the internet to check and what I'm saying.
So we're on the letters page. The first one, the star letter comes from Douglas Drinnan of Prestwick, and he writes, Aberdeen are the most refreshing development to occur in Scottish football over the past few seasons. Their attacking flair and ability to score goals is a pleasure for any fans to enjoy. Finally, the media are accepting Aberdeen as the number 1 team in Scotland. I think that's a fair comment at that time, wasn't it?
Well, that's right, because that was the nucleus of the Aberdeen team that came on to do great things under Sir Alec. To go on in Europe and win the Super Cup as well as the Cup Winners' Cup.
Yeah.
So he's right. The guy, is it Drinnan from Prestwick? No?
Yeah, Drinnan. Yeah.
I don't know. I thought there was a Hugh Drinnan was to do with one of the junior clubs, but I don't know that Drinnan. But what he's saying is right. I think we've got to agree that Aberdeen became, a superpower in football at that time.
Yeah. I mean,
to the one man.
Yeah, they just won the Premier League the season before this, Maggot, so they're coming in as champions. But yeah, definitely, a breath of fresh air for Scottish football at that point.
Absolutely.
Next is one I'm going to look at is from Jay Morris from Woodford Green, and he thinks it's petty of TV companies to not cover games if any teams are wearing shirt advertising, given that there's advertising all round the pitch. He suggests it may actually be a good thing to stop all TV coverage, as this may boost attendances. If he thinks that's petty back then, do you imagine what he would be thinking of the game nowadays?
Well, you've given me another half an hour there if you want a story about that, about jersey advertising, because the first club in Scotland, it was around about the early 80s as well, when we got a letter from the league saying that in junior football they're allowing it, but it's got to be no bigger than 16 square inches, and it's the same in senior football. But if you're not on television, you can have 32 square inches, right? Now, the first team in Scotland to have this is a quiz question, to have their sponsor on their shirt right across the front of the shirt. That's a quiz question. I'll tell you the answer.
Remember that I've read your book, but I knew this before anyway. And so it was Hibs with Buckter.
It was Hibs Buckter.
Yeah.
And of course they put it on there because they had a small Buckter motif, just saying that's their kit. But then they put it in large letters. But then they signed George Best, and that was the big thing. So half of Edinburgh was going about with a new Buckter. Buckter in the front and Best in the back, number 11. And that was a bestseller. We were the second team in Scotland to have and it was what was it? Was it
BOC, wasn't it?
Sorry?
BOC?
BOC, British Auction Company, and the story took too long to tell again, but I'll leave it. But we had BOC. They had an explosion at their factory, and I went in to say you're in disgrace in the community. If you give the local school, the John Bosco School, the second biggest school I think in Glasgow at the time, and give our football club a donation, it'll ingratiate you with the local community because you're in disgrace because of that explosion. And he says, how much do you want? And I said, I had no idea. I said, 10,000. I went to the board meeting and I said, hey, I'm trying to get sponsorship for the jersey, gentlemen. The wee chairman says, he was Mr. Dunn. Sponsor, there's nothing going on that jersey. That jersey's sacrosanct. That jersey's won the Scottish Cup 3 times. I said, oh, well, that's too bad. And one of the other directors, a professor, Robert Jack from the university, law professor, said, Mr. Manager, did you mention money to the British Auction? I said, yeah. How much did you say? I said, I had no instruction from the board, but I just off the top of my head, I said 10,000. The wee chairman says, oh. I would put BOC in my bare torso for 10,000. So we got the BOC 10,000.
Yeah.
And that was we were second after Hibs to have a sponsor, and of course every club's now got a sponsor, and it's very lucrative in some cases. See, the Old Firm had to have the same sponsor because they would, if it was one only, and if it was C.R. Smith only on one jersey, the half of the population wouldn't use C.R. Smith, right? So if they both got it, and the same with tenants or whatever drink they put on it, so it used to be that the Old Firm had to have the same sponsor. Otherwise they were half in their business. But,
yeah. Okay, next one on this page it's an Ask the Expert question, and I really like this one. David Winter of Richmond wants to know who scored the fastest own goal on record. Now, Shoot's replies say, as far as the Football League goes, I can't trace anyone to better the unenviable fate of Everton's Tommy Wright. He scored an own goal against Liverpool in 33 seconds, and then another against Man City in 32 seconds on successive weekends. You would give up football after that, wouldn't you? Just think, this isn't for me.
That's it. That'll do me, yeah.
that was March 1972, 33 seconds. It wasn't the fastest own goal, I think. There was a Bradford City defender, Dave Fretwell, scored after 20 seconds, but I think scoring 2 own goals successively in 32 and 30.
That's incredible. I know, I can't beat that.
Moving on, before we have a little break from the magazine, we're going to look at the Celtic Spotlight. So it's Spotlight on Celtic and then the team photo. And it's the headline along with it is Billy McNeil's priority is home rule for Celtic. So the article begins, Europe was once the arena where Celtic dazzled and devastated with command performances to leave fans at home and abroad breathless with excitement. Alas, those days of mesmerising brilliance are in the past as his Parkhead men, winners of the European Cup in 1967, try desperately to put their game together in the Premier Division. Celtic's stay in the Cup Winners' Cup was short-lived as they were put out in the first round to Timisoara of Romania, having had 2 sent off and 4 others booked in the game. Celtic were furious and lodged a protest against the ref. With many stating that Aberdeen are taking over in Scotland, the pressure is on for Celtic to rebuild and reshape. Manager Billy McNeil says, we are not getting enough for our efforts. We are putting a lot into our game. We are dictating matches, but we are not reaping the expected rewards. That is something we must remedy. McNeil is in his 3rd year as manager at the club and has brought in players such as Frank McGarvey, Davy Provan, Murdo McLeod and Dom Sullivan. A recent game against Aberdeen highlights Celtic's woes, and they were 2-0 up and pounding the Dons before conceding 2 goals, falling apart and hanging on in the end for a draw. McNeil was working day and night to solve the problems, with an 18-year-old Charlie Nicholas being mentioned as a striker of breathtaking quality. Now, as a spoiler, McNeil would find the answer to his problems this season as they went on to finish champions 7 points ahead of second placed Aberdeen. They would also finish the win next season as well, so it was the start of a couple of years.
Well, impressive, that's all I will say, you know, and I don't know what you want to add to that. The photograph is a terrific photo, and when you look at the players in the team photo, you realise the quality. I put the glasses on to get a right good look at them. Yeah, you realise the quality of team that they had there, and quite a number of them went on to. Obviously, they were involved in the winning of the European Cup, because it's a really impressive Celtic team, and it's also a very impressive photograph.
Yeah,
You know, it's brilliantly balanced. Everybody looking the part, and I've got to say, wait a minute till I get a better look. I enlarge it. There it is. And you see, look at the staff. There's John Clark, the manager, John Clark, and the guy Brian Scott. Physio. That's all.
yeah.
I saw a photo of Dundee United recently, and I counted 16 staff. I think, you know, they're a staff member for everything.
Yeah.
You know, for taking your pulse as you go onto the training pitch. But that's a terrific Celtic team. And see at the end there, you know, the two guys at the end, Billy McNeil and Roy Aitken, wonderful guys. And there's Lennox Bobby in the front, with no blood in his jersey, which is a change.
Yeah.
I like to see him with blood down the front of the jersey. And a young-looking Murdo MacLeod from Dumbarton there, sitting beside him. You know that I used to pick teams when I was away with the Scottish team. At the end of a training session, I would have a fun game, 8-a-side, and I would do the tall against the small. I would do the married against the single. I'd do the old firm against the rest. I'd do those that have got their driving licence still and those who have lost their licence. I would try all the various things, and I tried one which came back to haunt me. I tried the good-looking team against the ugly team. And when I got back to Glasgow after the World Cup in Italy, a lady stopped me at the airport. I was going to my car. She said, "Excuse me, you Craig Brown?" I said, "Yes." "Why was my husband in the ugly team?" I said, "I don't know who. What's your name?" She says, "Mary." I said, "That's not any help. I need your surname." She says, "MacLeod." I said, "Are you Murdo's wife?" She said, "Yes." I said, "Well, ugly team, dyed hair, false teeth, ugly team." So what it tells you that they phone home and they say, "Put me in the ugly team today." Well, I'm looking at that Celtic team, and I've got to admit that is a right good-looking team, and very, very, very smart. What I can't understand though, and I would love to ask who's in charge. 3 of them have got their arms folded, and the other 3 at the other end, beside John Clark, they've got their arms folded, and at the other end, their arms are behind their back. You know, that's a strange one.
Yeah.
My manager Shankly would go off his head at that.
Yeah. I'm a bit of a stickler for that, Craig, in that I think with team photos, details like that are important, because it's going to be the snapshot for that, you know, period in time. And I think, you know, as you say, you've got 3 in the end folding their arms, and the other side everybody else is consistent, and I just think it does detract a moment. Obviously it's not a great deal in the grand scheme of things, but it's noticeable.
But you know, it's part to do with the disciplines, to do with the standards. Now, I've got this phrase that I use when I'm doing coaching courses: the standards you set are the standards you get. Whatever you want, that's what you get. It's a small thing, but it takes a wee while to know. I did notice it the first time I looked at the picture, the photograph. But their stockings are up tidily the same, and their boots are black boots, and the laces are black. Now, we used to have white laces just before that time, and the laces were washed after every game, so the laces had to be white. But a great photograph, and a great quality of footballer in the photograph too.
So at this point, Craig, we're going to jump out the magazine and we're going to do a focus on which you know was in the magazines, but we're going to do it on yourself. So there's a bunch of questions that I'm going to fire towards you, if you just give your answers. So first question, full name.
My full name is James Craig Brown, and because there were so many people in Glasgow, James Brown, in prison and getting drunk and being arrested, James Brown's arrested again, drunk and charging a car. They took the James away. Well, I'm still, my full name is James Craig Brown, but they started as a youngster calling me Craig because there were so many James Browns. My grandfather was James Brown and an uncle James Brown, and it was to differentiate. So I was Craig Brown.
Yeah, it was something I didn't know until recently. So that's good to get an explanation. Where was your birthplace?
It was Glasgow, Corker Hill, the railwayman's village, just beside Pollock in Glasgow, between Mosspark and Pollock. Corker Hill, it's called.
Yep.
My grandfather, I was born during the war. You see, my father was away in the forces. He was in the RAF, and my mother was staying. We were actually staying in Falkirk, and my mother came back to stay with her parents, and her father was an engine driver. So we came to the railwayman's village, which was Corker Hill. So that's where I was born.
Okay. What was your first car?
Car was a Ford Popular, a basic. It was a hard job keeping it straight in the road. It was swinging all about the place, you know. It was, and it wasn't a new car by any stretch of the imagination. It was an old Ford Popular, just two-door car. Then, when eventually, a few years later, I managed to get a new one. When I tried to sign for Falkirk, I needed a car a bit more to live. I was living in Hamilton and teaching there, and I was travelling to Falkirk for training. I bought a Vauxhall Viva. So I never had a flash car at any time.
What's your favourite player? We know this one.
Well, Dave Mackay was my favourite player, without doubt. I think there's no question of that. Arguably, at close quarters, Baxter was as good a player. He was a favourite because he was, this Scottish word, he was gallus.
Yeah.
He would take on the English team and play people up at Wembley. That kind of attitude. The two wingers that I had to play against when I was a left back at times at Dundee were brilliant, and one was Henderson and one was Johnston. Now, Willie Henderson would beat you by knocking the ball past you, and he was electric pace. But Jimmy Johnston would beat you by trickery.
Yeah.
You would have to pay to get back in when you're playing against him. Johnson, who was so skillful. So these guys were all contemporaries of mine, but they were all wonderful players.
Okay. Who's your favourite team?
Well, I was brought up as a Hamilton Accies supporter, and I have a real soft spot for Hamilton. But I've got to say, at the moment, Aberdeen's my team because, I went up there to work to manage the team, and they kept me as a director. They've now kept me as the ambassador of the club. So my favourite team, I've got to admit, is Aberdeen. Okay.
What's the most memorable match that you've been involved in?
I think it may disappoint you to say, I think it might be the World Cup final, Scotland against Saudi Arabia, youth World Cup final. But that's not what you're wanting. I think you're wanting a senior,
No. Listen, if that's the answer.
I think that to have the whole nation supporting a team, a Scottish team, and it's a world that there are 208 or 9 countries in the world, and to be in the final in your own country and to play Saudi Arabia and to play as well as we did, that is a favourite game. But to beat England at Wembley was another favourite, and we beat Germany in Germany with the national team. So I'm stealing 2 other games, the Germany and the England game, and both these games. I think this is an important thing to tell you, that I was looking for a coach for the Scotland B team when I had the full team. I was looking for a coach for the B team, and I was thinking, who can we get? And I lived in the air, and I was driving up past Kilmarnock, and the manager of Kilmarnock was a super guy called Tommy Burns. And I says, I'll ask Tommy if he'll manage this team. So I went in to Rugby Park, and I said to him, Tommy, would you take the B team just in a one-off with friendly international against Wales, and we've got a game the same night? Tommy says, okay. So to cut the long story short, Tommy took the team after the game. I didn't see the game because we were playing another international that night. I said to him, anybody I should put in my first team? He says, yes, definitely. I said, who? He says, you should put Don Hutchison in your team. I says, no chance. He'll never get in the team. I says, we've got a midfield full of good players. You know, I said, we've got McAllister, we've got McCall, we've got Lambert, we've got Collins. He'll not get a game. Why you tell me? He says, I don't mean in midfield. I know what you tell me. He plays midfield for West Ham and for Liverpool. He says, I'm talking about up front. Try him up front, Craig, I'm telling you. He says, I stuck him up front in the B team. And he was brilliant. Well, the rest is history. We had a friendly with Germany in Germany. And I put him up front. And we beat Germany 1-0. Who scored the goal? Don Hutchison. We had to play England in a playoff down at Wembley. And we beat England 1-0. Who scored the goal? Don Hutchison. Who told me to play him? Tommy Burns. So, I mean, I don't think if you're any time in your career, if you're too arrogant or too cocky or big-headed not to ask for advice and help, you're stupid. And I get great help from Tommy Burns.
I was going to ask a wee bit about that game, Craig, at Wembley. I remember you reading in the first leg at Hampden, I think England had Tony Adams and Martin Keown as the central defensive partnership, but at Wembley it was Adams and Southgate, is that right?
Yes, that's right, yes. And Southgate's a good footballer, but he was a bit softer than Keown. They left Keown out and they kept Adams in. So I told our goalkeeper, when playing it long, put it right on top of Southgate. And Don, you just go in and abuse him. And Don battered him. And I think he had an uncomfortable night, Gareth Southgate, against Hutchison, as anybody would have, because Hutchison was a big, brave, tough guy. And he gave him a hard time. And Billy Dodds played, he was the other striker. I never ever played a team without two strikers. Never ever. We played quite often 3-5-2 or it was 4-4-2, but I never just played one up. So, you know, one of my strikers was Dodds on that occasion, and the other one was, but the best man in the park by a mile at Wembley on that occasion surprised you, because England had guys like in midfield, they had Paul Scholes, in midfield they had Ince in midfield, and the best man in the park was Barry Ferguson. He was outstanding down there. And he was the youngest player on the pitch. I think he was 20 at the time.
A cracking player. What's the best country that you've visited? And I'm sure you have a lot to choose from.
Oh, a lot. It's impossible to. The best trip I've had with a team, I mentioned it earlier, was we were a month in Chile. Yeah. And we were on the Pacific coast in a place called Valparaiso. Or sometimes it's called Vina del Mar. Valparaiso. What a beautiful location that was on the Pacific coast. And the weather was fabulous, the food was great, the tournament was terrific. It was the World Under-20 Championship. So, and it was in Chile. And I'm lucky I've been to quite a number of the South American countries. You know, and of course Mexico and Brazil and Argentina. I've been to a lot of these places, but without doubt, Chile, the climate, the food, the environment in that lovely place. I wouldn't say Santiago was a holiday venue. You know, it was a big bustling city, but where we were based was terrific. So I would say, of the European islands, I like Cyprus. You know. Yeah. You know, I've been to them all. Well, I've been to the Ibizas and the Majorcas and the Tenerifes and all these places. But Cyprus is, again, a good climate, nice environment, and I enjoy the football in Cyprus as well.
So what's your favourite food, maybe connected? Or is it?
Yes, well, I'm a wee bit disposed to, be honest, to go to an Indian. Yep. And I'll be happy to have an Indian or a Chinese food, but I'm the kind of guy that will eat anything. You know, I'm not fussy in any way. But you know, I like to go into an Italian restaurant, an Indian restaurant, as well as the British ones. But To ask you for a specific favourite, I think I'll take a fish supper any day.
That'll do. What's your favourite TV show of all time?
Well, I watch almost exclusively sport, and the sports scene, I've got to say, I watch that consistently in Sky Sports News, and I think golf in Sky Sport and Sky is outstanding as well. So I'm not a film viewer. I'm not one for watching movies. I'm watching sport, mainly golf and football.
Right. Okay, final question. Which person in the world would you most like to meet?
Oh, I think, honestly, it's very different. I'm most fortunate. I think I've met the ones that I would like to meet. That I've met. Really lucky. The Sean Connerys and the Rod Stewarts. These are the guys, the Scots guys, that have given great credit to our country.
Yep.
And Sean Connery used to phone me after internationals, and the girls in the office thought it was a wind up, but it was him asking to get through just to talk about the game the night before.
Yeah.
And then Rod Stewart would come and join us when we used to practice in the USA before a World Cup or a European Championship. And Rod would come and join the training session with us, invited us to his concert in the Madison Square Gardens, had the whole team up on the stage.
Wow.
So, I mean, I can't think there's anyone that other the one that's a contemporary of mine age-wise that I would really like to have a round of golf with, Jack Nicklaus.
Right.
Because I think he's just a gentleman and a wonderful golfer. Although, we have a wonderful one in Aberdeen, won the Open, Paul Lawrie.
Mm-hmm.
But Jack Nicklaus has always been one of my heroes. And if you're asking me for someone that I haven't met, that I would like to meet, I would think Jack Nicklaus.
Okay, brilliant. Listen, I've got a few photographs I just want to... We've actually probably talked about a lot of them, but there's a few photographs that I just want to go through that aren't in the magazine. So, first one, starting off, can you still see the screen, Craig?
Yes, I've got that, yep. I see that.
So this is you, a young you at Rangers.
That's the training strip. That's the Rangers training strip we had. So obviously they used an old match strip for training purposes. So we all were on that training strip. That was taken at Ibrox. Yeah.
Okay, so next one, moving on. This one is taken down at Inverclyde. I don't know if you can spot yourself, but if it helps, I've zoomed in. There's you in there, and it's...
I see myself there, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just some of the faces that are in there is quite incredible.
There, right? I see. If we do, right in the middle of the laugh is Dick Campbell.
Yep.
Right in the middle, and then on his right shoulder, Kenny Cameron behind him.
Cameron, yeah.
And beside Kenny, to the left at the front is Alec Miller.
Yep.
But some of them I'm not recognising.
Yeah.
Pardon me.
See if we can see at the front here. So.
There's two guys there. I'm sitting, and I don't know who I'm sitting beside. I think that's Jim Fleeting down in the front there.
Yeah, it is.
With and then Andy Roxrock beside, up the right hand side.
Yeah, it's a great photo. I mean, you could spend so. I mean, just up top left. I can see Tony Fitzpatrick up top left.
These were great times we had down there. Were thoroughly enjoyable. Yeah. And I'm what they come of foreign guys that keep in touch with us. So we're fortunate. Mm-hmm. But did I see Bill Monroe up the back row? Up with a red top? Is that Bill Monroe?
I don't think that's Bill. I'll give it a closer look later on. No, I don't think.
Not, but Bill Monroe, because I think that's Donald Park beside him in the green.
Right. Okay. I'll send it on to you anyway, and you can.
Well, that's good. I can try and.
So next one, Hammy and the Hamsters.
There we are.
There we go. Well, a good looking bunch.
The back row from Kenny Cameron, Alex Stewart, and Alec Hamilton, and Hugh Robertson, myself.
So what was the format behind it? Were you all singers, or was there musicians, or
No,
a backing band that you played to?
so Hammy was a pianist,
Right.
and played the piano. And nowadays clubs go to, in the winter break, they go to Dubai, or they go to La Manga or somewhere like that. Dundee, in the time when I was there, they used to go to Pitlochry or Crieff, and we'd go to a hotel in Crieff Hydro or Pitlochry Hotel, Fisher's Hotel, and it was boring because it was black and white television. And so what would the boys do at night? You know, they weren't allowed out, so we get round the piano, and there was a grand piano, and the Beatles were big time at that time, and so we would sing "Can't Buy Me Love" and the Beatles stuff.
Yeah.
And Hammy would play the piano, and we'd all be singing. And there were some old dears there. It was a kind of care home as well, the Fisher's Hotel. So the old dears, one of us had a son who was the band leader in Dundee in the JM Ballroom. His name was Johnny Battersby, I remember that. And she said, "My son would love to hear you. So when are you singing next?" And I didn't know. Hammy said, "We'll sing whenever you want us to sing. When your son comes, we'll get the boys together." So he heard this, and he says, "That'd be brilliant in the dance hall at Dundee at night, on the Saturday night after your game. You could come in and sing a few." So we sang a few of the Beatles. Then he wrote us a couple of songs, and these are the two that we recorded.
Yeah.
And I actually went well. We were in the cup final in 1963 Dundee against Rangers, and of course before the cup final we were selling like hot cakes, so it was top of the charts in Scotland. My Dream Came True, it was called.
Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah, I think you'll get it on YouTube still.
I'll need to give it a listen. So next one. So this is your time at Motherwell.
Yeah.
So there you are.
That's a good team. That's Willie Pettigrew is sitting next to me.
Yep.
Right at the end of that. I'm there beside Willie Pettigrew at the side. Good team. And it's amazing, one goalkeeper.
Yeah.
And they're smart, their hands are behind their back. But you see again, there's the staff. There's just Willie McLean and myself and two trainers.
Yeah.
Trainer for the reserves, John Hunter, and the trainer Willie McKenzie for the first team. And that was your lot. And that was a good team, that Motherwell team. Celtic came in the Scottish Cup with Jock Stein, the manager, Kenny Dalglish playing, and we beat them at Fir Park in the Cup quarter final. I don't see any Clyde Bank connection there, is there?
No, I don't see him.
Colin McAdam, he's Dumbarton. Yeah. He's beside the goalie in the middle, big fella. And John McVeigh, ex-Clyde. Ali Hunter's the goalkeeper. And on either side of him, two big fellas, Colin McAdam and John McVeigh. I'm looking at the rest, I don't see any other.
I love Craig, up the top left-hand corner, it's Alex Spark, who looks as though something funny's happening. You're talking about how you need to, do a team photo right. What I love is he's laughing. He's the only one who's laughing, and next to his name in the list it says contract cancelled. So actually it says that, and I wondered if it's related to the team photo at all, maybe.
Does it say that?
Yeah. It's a very strange thing to put in a team photo.
I see it, Alex. That was because we let him go. He came up from England and he was a stone overweight, at least.
Yeah.
So Willie McLean was an intolerant manager.
Yeah.
He was crabbit as anything. And I'm just looking at any other good players. Pettigrew sitting beside me. Bobby Graham beside him. Joe Work. Maranello, yeah. John, there were one or two there. Peter Miller with the blonde hair.
Mm-hmm.
And just behind me, he could get the tackles. And Gregor Stephen, rough, tough, McVeigh.
Yeah.
When I look at how there were some hard men there, Joe Ward was a hard man. And I'm looking along, who else? Pat Gardner, good player, behind me.
Was Pat Gardner, was he Dundee United?
Yes, that's right. Stuart McLaren was probably the hardest one. He's behind Willie McLean standing beside the trainer,
Yeah.
Stuart McLaren. Oof. An animal. But a lovely man.
Okay, see if I've got another team. So this one is from a little later on, and it's Scotland. What now? So this is just before you get the Scotland role, and it's looking at all the candidates. So Andy Roxburgh's on his way, and you're up there with Kenny Dalglish, George Graham, Graham Souness, Alex Ferguson, Walter Smith, Joe Jordan, and Gordon Strachan. And let's see what it says about you. It says, who is this man, Craig Brown? The question on most people's lips when Craig Brown was named as temporary success to Roxburgh was, Craig who? But if Brown gets good results in the remaining World Cup games against Italy and Malta, everyone will know who he is. Because if he does the business in those matches, he will almost certainly be given the job full time. And Brown insists that he shouldn't be written off simply because he doesn't have a big name profile. I'll put my heart and my soul into the job, he promises. I want it, and I would be honoured to be in charge of the national team. Brown has made his name over the years working with the Scotland youth and under-21 teams and has an impressive record. He led the under-16s to the World Cup final in 1989, the under-19s to the last day at the World Cup 2 years ago. And it's that sort of pedigree which could well earn him the biggest prize in Scottish football. And the rest is history.
Well, I didn't think I was going to get the jobs, to be honest. In fact, I'm sure I wouldn't, because you see the names that they were.
Yeah.
But I think you know, having been asked by Alex Ferguson to go on the staff to Mexico was a bonus for me, because that the trip to Mexico was very good and well controlled, and because Alec was there, obviously. The officials were there in Mexico. In fact, we were in New Mexico before it. We were staying in a place called Santa Fe for nearly 2 weeks, 12 days, preparing altitude training. Well, they could see I got on very well with the players, and the training sessions were good, so they were happy. If we turn, I wouldn't do anything different, I tell you. I'm the luckiest guy in football that's lasted as long and been with good people and good teams. So, I mean, I'm just very, very fortunate. I've never said it other than that. I don't think I merited getting the breaks that I got, but when I got them, I tried to honour them and do the best I could. So the only thing I haven't done is manage the bankage.
Still time.
Still time.
Right.
Yeah, I'm going to jump to the back here. So back into the magazine, but we're on the back page now, and we're going to have a quick look at a focus on, since we've done one with yourself, let's have a look at Asa Hartford's focus on at Everton. So Richard Asa Hartford, again, we know the story why he was called Asa. Did you know that story, Craig?
No, I don't.
The story is that his parents, or at least his dad, was a big Al Jolson fan, and Al Jolson's real name was Asa, and so he got the name Asa.
It's a very distinctive name. I like it.
Yeah.
And I know why you're highlighting him, because his birthplace is Clyde Bank.
I mean, it's just it's accident. These things are pure coincidence, and
Aye.
So do you want to pick out any answers from there, Tom?
Yeah. I don't know.
Favourite activity on a day off?
Day at the races.
Yeah. Let's see. Biggest influence on career: Stuart Williams, a coach at West Brom. Born in Clydebank, obviously. Favourite newspaper: Daily Mail. Right, okay, we can move on from that. Favourite player: John Robertson. Yeah, he was a great.
That's good.
My favourite hero of childhood: Dennis Law. And
that's good as well.
Golf, tennis, and squash. His most difficult opponents are quite substantial as well. Billy Bremner and Alan Ball. That's two pretty good names to have in there as opponents. Yeah.
Yes, I got on well with him. I think when you've got a colleague in football, you know, if you've got a job, and you appoint what they all would say an assistant or an assistant manager, I think if you're personally friendly with that individual, it's a very, very big help. You know, if the likes of what I'm quite excited at the prospect of Scott Brown coming to Aberdeen, because he's personally friendly with the new manager, right, with Stephen Glass. Now, if he didn't know Stephen Glass and he'd just been appointed as a very good player at Celtic and a motivator, etc., I would have been saying, well, that's a good appointment. But I think the fact that they're personally friendly makes it a great appointment, because, you know, there'll be no breaking in, you know, there'll be disagreement, I would imagine, but it won't be, there won't be violent arguments and things like that. Now, the personal friendly bit, I think, is very important in football for a colleague. And I think anyone will tell you that. If you're looking for an assistant or a colleague in the staff, somebody with whom you're friendly, it'll go much better. And, you know, I think, and usually there are lasting friendships, and there's usually successful ones. You know, when I think, you know, Arsene Wenger, who was, they had the same assistant, I'm trying to remember his name for a long, long time.
Pat Rice.
That's right, Pat Rice, for ages and ages. And then, you know, you had the Derby County, you had Clough and Taylor, you know, and Alec Ferguson he had quite a number of assistants at Manchester United, but he had Knox was his main man at Aberdeen and Manchester. You know, and Walter Smith and Knox, they kind of go as a pair. So I think, you know, Jock Stein and Sean Fallon, I think the pairing is important, and then the players don't see any divisiveness. They don't try and play one against the other. They know they can't do that. I used to say to the players, don't say anything to me that you don't want me to say to the man. If I'm the assistant, you don't want me to say to the manager. Now, I was the assistant at Motherwell to Willie McLean, and I was the assistant with the Scottish team with Andy Roxburgh. I was one of the assistants with Alec Ferguson, and I would say to them, don't say something to me that you want me not to say to the manager, because my first loyalty is to him, not to you. You know, there are players tell you something that would want the manager to get that information, but if they know that you were loyal to the manager, they wouldn't give you any gossip, you know, any crap.
Yeah. Okay, so listen, we've got to the end of the magazine, and I'd like to say a big thank you for taking us through that and all the chat, Craig. What's going on with you? What are you up to at the moment? Do you have any projects on?
I'm happily retired because you know what age I am, so you know you know. Aberdeen, which gets me to every Aberdeen game. You know, I'm in the director's box at every game, home and away, and I'm required for duties. You know, but particularly not so much now because the hospitals are not. But if there's a former player or a long-standing supporter in hospital, I'll phone them or visit them. I'll go and watch the Midnight League football. I'll go and watch the youth teams. You know, anything where they're looking for, you know, the disabled group. You know, I'm patron of Scottish Disability Sport, so Aberdeen have a disabled team. The champions in Scotland of wheelchair football are Clyde, would you believe? So the Clyde are the top team. They're representing Scotland. There's a European Cup coming up, and but I think it'll be delayed now because of the pandemic. But you know, my involvement in football is just, I've nothing to do with the team. You know, I don't have anything to do. If the manager asks me, you know, this player or that player, I'll tell him. But I don't go and offer my services. I might take an odd session with the youth team, you know, take a wee coaching session with them.
Yeah.
So I'm the ambassador that the staff, the youth coaching staff can say to me, what would you do here? What would you do? Do you mind doing this or doing that with them? And I'm happy to do it because, you know, I'm very fortunate. I'm well looked after by the club.
Yeah.
I'm driving their car, I'm phoning their phone, things like that. So, you know, Aberdeen Football Club has been very kind to me, and hopefully I'm returning the favour.
Excellent. No, listen, it's been an absolute pleasure. I could listen to you even longer, but
Yeah, it's been great, Craig. It's been a real delight.
Well, I'm sorry, I am a bit long-winded when I start.
Not at all.
But I'll talk to you anytime. You give me a call, I'll be pleased to tell you.
We'll have you back on again if you'll come back on again, Craig. Absolutely.
I'll come back on, and but I think you'll be bored listening to that again. I think, but
I tell you what, we'll get you on to go through the second half of the magazine.
Okay. Anytime, just give me a shout and I'll be there. Okay.
That's right. No, listen, thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for your time.
I want to say to both of you that I've done so many of these podcasts, but I've never known guys as well prepared as yourselves. And,
Thank you.
You know, it's really a pleasure to talk to you when you know what you're talking about and you're knowledgeable. So thank you very much.
Brilliant.
Okay.
That means a lot.
Thanks
Thank
very
you.
much, Craig.
Take care.
Cheers, guys. Thanks.
All the best. Good
Bye-bye.
night.
Bye. Bye. Good night.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.